My son's bike disappeared.my brother said. My son needed it more. Yours had already served its purpose. They laughed. I didn't point. 2 days later I found a buyer, paid cash and got the bike back. The next day they found out about it. Their smiles disappeared. The bike disappeared 3 days before Daniel's birthday. One day it was in the garage under the tarp where I'd kept it hidden for weeks. The next it was gone. No break-in. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. Just gone. And the worst part? I knew exactly who took it. My brother doesn't ask. He takes. Always has. Took my stuff when we were kids. Took our dad's car for a joyride at 17. Took a loan from me 2 years ago that he forgot to repay. And now he'd taken the one thing my son had coming to him. The one thing I worked late hours, skipped lunches and sold my old engagement ring to pay for. I didn't even ask him outright. I knew the truth before I opened my mouth. So I said it. Did you take Daniel's bike? He looked up from his plate like I'd asked him something dumb. Said Cody needed it more. Just like that. My nephew, who already had a bike, mind you, one of those fat tire monstrosities that he barely used except to run over flower beds, apparently needed the midnight blue BMX more than my son because, according to Jason, it was just sitting there. I didn't tell him that I'd saved for 2 months. I didn't tell him I'd stayed up late repainting it after work. I didn't tell him how Daniel had circled it in a catalog months ago and whispered about it to me in the car like it was too big of a dream to say out loud. I just stared at Jason. He kept chewing. Told me I was overreacting. Said Daniel would forget about it in a week. Said Cody already loved it. Then he smiled. That greasy, smug smile he used to give when he'd steal fries off my plate and dare me to do something about it. Like we were kids again. Like I didn't have a 10-year-old whose eyes I'd have to meet in a few days when he opened an empty garage. I asked where the bike was now. He told me Cody had taken it to their place across town. Said I should let it go, because things have a way of balancing out. And then he laughed. Both of them, Jason and Cody, laughed. Like they'd won something. Like this was a game. I didn't laugh. I didn't speak. I just turned, walked upstairs and locked the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop, pulled up my old messages on Marketplace and found the guy I'd bought the bike from. Told him it had been stolen. Asked if he had the buyer's info. Said it had sentimental value. He hesitated but eventually gave me what he had. A street name, a house number and a vague description of a guy in his 40s who paid cash. Thanked him. Then I pulled out my emergency stash. The one I swore I'd never touch. Folded bills I'd hidden behind the lining of my makeup box. I counted it twice. It was enough. That was Sunday. On Tuesday I made the drive out there alone. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't say where I was going or why. I just got in the car, stared at the road and made a quiet promise in my head. You're going to see what it feels like to lose something that mattered to you. Because this isn't just about a bike. It never was. The house was at the end of a dead-end street, half an hour out of town. Faded siding, overgrown yard, a rusted-out pickup in the driveway. I parked across the street and sat for a minute watching. A kid was shooting hoops in a cracked driveway 3 houses down. Nobody outside here. Nobody watching. I knocked. A man in a work vest answered, mid-40s, looked like he did drywall or poured concrete for a living. He had the kind of face that's been in the sun too long, not unfriendly but not exactly warm either. I asked if he'd bought a bike recently, a dark blue BMX. He stepped out and pointed toward the backyard. I followed. There it was. Leaning against the side of a shed like it meant nothing. Still had the scuff on the left pedal I hadn't finished sanding out. My repaint job still holding. My son's future birthday gift, sitting in the weeds behind someone else's house. I asked if he'd bought it from a guy named Jason. He said yeah, a guy in his 30s, said it was his kid's old bike, barely used. Took $80 for it. I told him the truth. That it wasn't his to sell. That it was stolen from my garage. He stared at me for a long second. Then asked if I had proof. I didn't. Not the kind people like that ask for. But I had cash. I pulled it from my purse. $150. Almost double what Jason got. He looked at the money, looked at me, then shrugged. Said take it. No hesitation. No questions. I walked the bike back to my car in silence. Strapped it in like I was carrying a sleeping child. My hands were shaking but I wasn't sure if it was from the relief or the rage. On the drive home I stopped at a gas station and just sat in the lot for a while, letting it all settle. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jason still thought it was his to take. Thought I wouldn't fight back. What he didn't know, what he never really understood, is that I don't forget. Ever. He could laugh all he wanted, but that bike had come back to me. And he was going to feel that loss. He was going to understand what it means to be taken from. Because that money I'd handed over, that was the exact amount Jason had been begging me for the week before. Said his bank account was frozen. Said he needed help with rent, groceries, something vague and urgent. I told him I'd think about it. I thought about it. And I spent it on something that mattered. The next morning, I wheeled the bike into Daniel's room before he woke up. Tied a red ribbon around the handlebars. His eyes lit up like the 4th of July when he saw it. He didn't even ask where it had been. Just stared at it like it was a dream that wandered in and decided to stay. Jason came home that afternoon. The moment he saw the bike in the hallway, his entire face changed. His smirk didn't show up this time. Just confusion. Then something colder. He asked if I'd gone to Cody's house. Said he heard someone had bought the bike back. I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He asked if I still had the money he'd asked for. I told him it was gone. Used it to fix a mistake someone else made. He didn't laugh this time. Neither did Cody. And that was just the beginning. Jason didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. Not a word. That would have been fine, except he didn't leave either. He sulked around the house, opening cabinets like he expected something to appear, slamming the fridge door louder than necessary, pacing between the living room and kitchen like he wanted me to notice his mood. I noticed. I just didn't care. That night, Daniel rode the bike up and down the sidewalk until the streetlights buzzed on. Every few laps, he'd glance back toward the porch to make sure I was still watching. I sat there the whole time. I didn't clap or cheer. I didn't need to. He felt it. Jason stood by the window like a shadow. Watching. Saying nothing. He waited until Daniel was in bed, then cornered me in the laundry room. Said I humiliated him. Said Cody was devastated. Said I made him look like a thief in front of his kid. I told him I didn't need to make him look like anything. He did that all on his own. He stood there working his jaw like he wanted to say something worse, but couldn't find the right words. Eventually he stormed off, slamming the guest room door behind him so hard a picture frame fell in the hallway. I didn't pick it up. By Friday morning his tone had changed. He came into the kitchen while I was packing Daniel's lunch and said he needed the money again, now more than ever. Said he had an opportunity but only if he could get a little cash up front. I asked what kind of opportunity. He muttered something vague about a friend's business. Sounded made up. He got defensive when I asked for details. I told him I was tapped out. That every cent I had was already spoken for. That wasn't a lie. I had spoken for it. Just not out loud. What Jason didn't know was that I had gone to our cousin Megan the night before. She works at a law office in town. Told her I needed help with something. A very specific something. Jason had been living in my house for 4 months, rent-free. No written agreement, but that didn't matter. Megan helped me draw up a notice. Legal enough to hold. 30 days to vacate. I printed it that morning. Folded it into an envelope. Left it on his bedroom door before I went to work. When I came home that evening, the envelope was on the kitchen table. Torn open. Jason was gone. He didn't come home that night. Didn't come home the next. No call. No text. No apology. Just silence. Then Sunday afternoon he came stumbling in with Cody, dropped a bag on the floor and said he needed more time. Just a little. He had nowhere else to go. I told him I wasn't changing the date. Not anymore. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. Said I was his sister. I reminded him that I was also Daniel's mother, and I was done choosing between the two. He didn't talk for a long time after that. And when he finally did, it wasn't what I expected. He said quietly that he might have screwed up worse than I realized. And that's when I found out what he'd actually done with the $80 from the bike. And why he needed more money now. And why the clock ticking down on his 30 days might have been louder than even I knew. Jason hadn't sold the bike for groceries. He hadn't sold it to pay bills or rent or anything that made the slightest bit of sense. He used the money to cover part of a gambling debt. Not a casual poker night with friends. Not fantasy football. This was real, with real people who didn't like to be owed. He didn't say the word loan shark, but he didn't have to. He told me the 80 was just a peace offering, something to buy him a little more time. Said he was supposed to pay the rest weeks ago. Said he'd been dodging calls. Said someone had followed him once while he had Qley with him and that scared him enough to finally come clean. I asked how much he owed. He hesitated. I asked again. 600. Not a million, not impossible, but enough to sink someone who had no job, no savings, no car, and was sleeping under someone else's roof like a ghost. I just stood there. He said he was going to figure it out. Said he just needed me to spot him the 6 and he'd pay me back. Swore on his life. I asked if he swore on Qley's life too. He didn't answer. I told him no. Not because I didn't have it. I did. But I had other plans for it now. I'd already moved the money into a separate account. I was filing paperwork for a restraining order from Daniel's father, and the legal fees weren't cheap. I wasn't about to burn that bridge for a brother who burned everyone he walked across. Jason didn't take it well. Said I was letting him sink. Said I was sentencing him and his son to the street. I reminded him that he made that decision the day he took a kid's bike and turned it into his own lifeline. He yelled. I didn't. Daniel heard it from the hallway. Came in eyes wide. Saw the tension. Asked what was going on. Jason looked at him, then at me, and then did something I didn't expect. He blamed Daniel. Said this was all because of that bike. That if I hadn't been so dramatic, if I hadn't made it a whole thing, he wouldn't be in this mess. Daniel didn't say anything. Just stood there, frozen, like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to feel guilty. That's when I lost it. I told Jason to pack. No 30 days. No paperwork. Just go. Tonight. He looked at me like he thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. He went to his room, slammed the door. I didn't follow. 2 hours later I heard the front door close. I waited. No footsteps. No return. I looked out the window. His duffel bag was gone. So was Qley. He didn't say goodbye. I didn't expect him to. But I also didn't expect what happened next. Because 2 days later I got a message from Megan. Jason had tried to use my name to open a line of credit. And he almost got away with it. The message from Megan was short. Call me. It's urgent. It's about Jason. I'd barely had time to breathe since he left. The house had finally gone quiet. Daniel had started sleeping better. The tension that used to settle in the walls like cigarette smoke was starting to clear. And now this. I called her back. She didn't sugarcoat it. Jason had used my name, my birthday, my old address. Everything he could remember, to apply for a credit card online. Said he needed it for emergencies. What he actually needed, Megan guessed, was more cash to crawl out of the hole he'd dug for himself. The only reason the bank flagged it was because he screwed up a detail. Listed the wrong employer. They called Megan's office as part of a verification, since she had helped with my legal paperwork earlier that week. The same last name must have caught someone's attention. I reported it immediately. Filed a fraud alert. Froze my credit. Spent the entire day calling banks and agencies. Had to explain everything 3 different times to 3 different people. I hadn't cried once during the whole bike ordeal, but this broke me. Because I could forgive a lot. I had. Repeatedly. But trying to drag my name down with him? That was the line. Jason didn't call. Didn't text. But I knew where he was. I knew because Qley's school called me 2 days later to say he'd missed class and Jason's number wasn't working. Apparently, I was still listed as an emergency contact. I showed up at the motel myself. The woman behind the counter didn't even ask for ID. Just nodded toward a door near the back when I said his name. I knocked. He opened it slow like he was expecting someone worse. His eyes were sunken. He hadn't shaved. Qley was lying on the bed behind him watching cartoons on mute. I didn't ask how things got so bad. I already knew. I just handed him a manila envelope. Copies of the fraud report, the alerts, the email trail. Told him if he ever touched my name again I'd press charges without blinking. He tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. Told him I didn't care if he hated me. Didn't care if he begged. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about Daniel. About making sure my son didn't grow up learning that family was just another word for people who hurt you and expect you to say thank you after. He didn't say anything. Just stood there with the papers in his hand, staring like he was reading them through water. I turned to leave. Then I heard him say something. Not an apology. Not an excuse. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't turn around. Didn't give him the dignity of a response. Because the truth was he did know where to go. He went exactly where he always goes. Straight through people. and I was done being a hallway. I didn't hear from Jason for 3 weeks. No calls. No texts. Nothing from Cody's school either, so I figured they'd either moved in with someone else or left town. Part of me hoped they had. The other part, the part that remembered us as kids riding bikes together in the summer heat barefoot and sunburnt, hated that I still cared. But then the letter came. Plain envelope. No return address. Postmarked from 3 towns over. Inside was a note in Jason's handwriting, short, barely legible, like he'd written it fast or hadn't planned to write it at all. I messed everything up. Cody's with his mom now. I know what I did and I know why you won't forgive me. Just don't let Daniel grow up hating people like I did. He still has a chance. I never did. No apology. No explanation. Just a half-buried confession mailed from nowhere. I stared at it for a long time, then shoved it in the back of a drawer I never open. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't want that letter to be part of his memory of this summer. I wanted him to remember the bike. The way it felt to fly down the street with the wind in his shirt. The way he finally stopped asking me if it was okay to be happy. Because that's the thing Jason never understood. That bike wasn't about money. It wasn't about stuff. It was about giving a kid something nobody could take away from him. And even though Jason tried, even though he did everything he could to ruin it, Daniel still had that ride. Still has it. He rides it every evening now. The paint's chipped. The back brake squeals. The ribbon I tied to the handlebars is long gone. But he rides it like it's the best thing he owns. Maybe it is. Jason tried to take something from my son. I took something back from him instead. His last chance. Not out of revenge. Out of survival. Because sometimes the people closest to you, the ones who should protect you, are the ones who will burn everything down if you let them stay. Jason learned that the hard way. And by the time he realized it, there was nothing left to fix. Some things don't come back. Not even family. Not even family. Not even family.